Welcome back after the break. You're watching Indus News and I'm Fiza Jamal bringing you our main stories in detail. We start from Indian occupied Kashmir, where a delegation led by former Congress chief Rahul Gandhi, who wanted to see the on-ground situation in the valley himself, has been sent back from the airport. This comes weeks after India stripped occupied Kashmir of its special status and placed the valley under a crushing curfew. Earlier, in an effort to hide its atrocities against Kashmiris, India's government asked opposition leaders not to visit the occupied valley. The leaders from Rashtriya Janata Dal, Trinamool Congress and Communist Party of India are included in the visiting group. Earlier, opposition parties held a protest in Delhi against the government, calling for the release of arrested Kashmiri leaders. India's crushing curfew has entered its 20th day as large swaths of Srinagar remained deserted.
Our work is finished. Our daily life has also ended. The schools are closed. They say the schools are open or the situation is normal, but the situation is not normal. Everyone is locked inside their houses.
Meanwhile, Turkish activists held a protest outside the Indian embassy in Ankara against the illegal actions of Modi's government. Moving on, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says India's illegal move to revoke occupied Kashmir special status has put regional peace at stake. Briefing the diplomats about the situation in the occupied valley, Qureshi said Kashmiris have been locked up in their houses since August the 5th. He said there is a complete communication blackout in the occupied region. Qureshi said the international community must take notice of the situation and intervene to protect the rights of Kashmiris. The foreign minister also said Pakistan is facing floods because India is not respecting the Indus Waters Treaty and has released water without a prior warning. Meanwhile, Qureshi told his Japanese and Maldivian counterparts about human rights violations in occupied Kashmir. Japan's foreign minister said his country believes in upholding human rights and rule of law. India's illegal move to change the special status of Kashmir has drastically affected people's lives throughout the disputed state. To distract international attention away from its indefinite round-the-clock curfew in occupied Kashmir, India has continuously shelled areas of Azad Kashmir near the disputed border. Details in this report.
Indian aggression against Kashmiris is being felt on both sides of the line of control. Unprovoked cross-border firing by Indian occupation forces has destroyed homes, schools and hospitals in Azad Kashmir. The people there live under constant threat.
Over there, a curfew has been imposed and people suffer only if they violate the curfew. For us, we are not allowed to have any peace while sleeping, getting up, going to school, going to hospital, running our shops. We want to carry on with life normally, but we cannot do so.
The total communications blackout imposed on occupied Kashmir by India has also had a huge impact on people on the other side of the line of control.
The Indian government has closed all internet systems. For the past 18 to 20 days, no one has had any contact with anyone across the border. Everyone is extremely worried, especially all those on this side who have close relatives on that side.
Agitated by India's unprovoked aggression, the people of Azad Kashmir have become increasingly angry.
By God, I am so agitated that I want to go to Jammu and Kashmir and Srinagar because I see and hear the news daily. And I wonder why those people do not have knives and guns and rifles. If they have arms and they are not restricted to their houses, they will fix Modi.
India is under mounting international pressure to reduce tensions with Pakistan and reverse its illegal annexation of occupied Kashmir.
And now in Paris, Kashmir Council Europe, Sikh community and other organizations have protested against illegal move of India to to revoke occupied Kashmir special status. The demonstration was staged on Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's arrival in France. The protesters said New Delhi's move is unconstitutional and against international laws. They said India is committing gross human rights violations in the occupied valley. The protesters also expressed fear about a genocide in occupied Kashmir under the pretext of security operations. They urged the world powers to intervene and stop Modi's oppressive measures. Moving on, the 45th annual G7 summit will start today in France. Leaders of the world's leading developed economies are meeting to shape a response to global challenges. The host, President Emmanuel Macron, says he wants member states to focus on the issues of gender inequality, education, and climate change. Macron has called for the fires in the Amazon rainforest to lead the summit agenda, calling them an international crisis. He has invited EU officials and leaders from Asia, Africa, and Latin America to join the G7 for a global push on these issues. The leaders will also address the escalating trade war between the US and China, the Iran nuclear deal, and unrest in Hong Kong. The US says it will raise tariffs on Chinese exports worth $250 billion by 5% from October the 1st. In a tweet, President Donald Trump asked US companies to leave China and find alternatives to doing business with Beijing. Trump said the US does not need China because it has lost trillions of dollars in dealings with the country over many years. Reacting to the new tariffs, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce said it does not want to see further deterioration of trade relations with China. This comes after Beijing unveiled retaliatory tariffs on $75 billion worth of imports from the U.S. China's Commerce Ministry said punitive tariffs of 5 to 10% will be imposed on 5,000 U.S. goods. Some Chinese tariff hikes will take effect on September the 1st and others on December the 15th. For more on this, we are joined by Mr. Inar Tangan, an analyst who is based in Beijing. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Tangan. So, you know, President Donald Trump has hit back at China by announcing new higher tariffs on imports. What's next after this latest move, and who will win this trade war?
Well, there are no winners in a trade war. It's just who suffers more. At this point, it would seem that the U.S. is under a lot of pressure, and particularly Donald Trump, because this has now become a political issue for him. His assumption was that he could maybe delay any kind of deal with China until closer to the election. But now with this rapid escalation, it's clear that this is not going to be the way that China plays it. In the past, Donald Trump and his administration thought they could press China's buttons at will to get a reaction. It now seems that China has learned the same. I mean, the timing of this just before the G7 is a real statement. China was very aware that this was going to be a difficult meeting for Donald Trump because he does not agree on any of the issues that are being put forward, does not like these meetings. So making him react just during or just prior to this G7 meeting was very strategic.
Right, and Mr. Tangan, you know, resultantly, international financial markets have also taken a big hit. So could this lead to a recession in the world economy as well?
Well, you have to understand that the reaction in the stock markets can be predictive, but these particular ones are reactive. What's been happening for a long time is that we've had the longest bull run, economic expansion in history. For the last more than 3 months, we've had an inversion in the bond curve. That means that you actually get
Well, due to some technical difficulties, we have lost him with Mr. Inar Tangan. We will try to get him back shortly. We'll move on to the next story. South Korea's military says North Korea has test-fired 2 more short-range ballistic missiles off its east coast. This is the 7th missile test conducted by North Korea in a month. Expressing strong concerns, Seoul's National Security Council urged Pyongyang to refrain from acts that raise military tensions. South Korea's military said it is tracking movements in the north to watch for more launches. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has said he has a good relationship with North Korea's leader.
Jong-un has been, pretty straight with me, I think. And we're going to see what's going on. We're going to see what's happening. He likes testing missiles, but we never restricted short-range missiles. We'll see what happens.
And nuclear talks between the U.S. and North Korea have been stalled since June. We move on to Israeli forces that have wounded at least 127 Palestinians during weekly protests along the Gaza border. Palestine's health ministry says Israeli troops fired live ammunition and rubber bullets at the protesters. The ministry says the wounded include 3 medics and a child. The demonstrations call for the lifting of Israel's blockade of the Gaza Strip imposed in 2007. Officials say over 300 Palestinians have been killed since the start of weekly protests in March last year. Syrian troops have seized the control of a string of villages in the northern countryside of Hama province. Syrian military said it took over the formerly rebel-held region for the first time since 2012. The army said troops seized the village of Murek, where Turkey maintains an observation post, pressing ahead its offensive towards Idlib. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the government forces have taken control of the entire northern Hama countryside. Yemen's southern separatists have declared a ceasefire after 2 days of fighting with government forces in Shabwa province. In a statement, the Southern Transitional Council says all parties should exercise restraint and abide by the ceasefire. The council called on its forces to retain control of the institutions and territory they have seized. The separatist leadership warned against any attacks on Saudi-led coalition forces. The separatists seized the southern port city of Aden earlier this month and last week extended their control to neighboring Abyan. And Turkey says its forces have launched Operation Claw 3 against Kurdish militants in northern Iraq. Turkey's defense ministry says the operation was launched to provide border security and destroy militant positions in areas around the Duhok governorate. It says 40,000 people have been killed by militants in just the last 30 years. Sri Lanka has ended the state of emergency imposed after the Easter Sunday terrorist attacks in April. Sri Lanka's military says the withdrawal of the emergency signifies the return of calm to the country. The emergency law gave security forces extensive powers to detain and interrogate suspects without court orders. Over 250 people were killed and more than 500 wounded in the attacks on churches and hotels in Colombo. The state of emergency has lasted for 4 months since a series of suicide bombings at churches and tourist hotels killed scores of people. In Indonesia, 4 people have been killed and another 33 went missing after a passenger ferry caught fire off the coast of Java. Rescue officials say 245 people have been rescued. The ferry was traveling from the city of Surabaya to Balikpapan on the island of Borneo with 280 people on board. The cause of the fire is yet to be determined. Russia has launched the world's first floating nuclear reactor in the Arctic. The reactor has set off on a 5,000-kilometer journey through Arctic waters to the Chukotka region. The plant, called the Academic Lomonosov, is loaded with nuclear fuel. It will replace a coal-fired power station and an aging nuclear plant supplying electricity to 50,000 people in the town of Pevek. Experts have expressed concerns about the environmental impact of the project. Brazil has ordered its armed forces to help fight a record number of forest fires in the Amazon. The orders came after growing international anger over the country's environmental crisis. President Jair Bolsonaro authorized the deployment of soldiers in nature reserves, indigenous lands, and border areas in the region. Earlier, French President Emmanuel Macron threatened to block a European Union trade deal with South American states, including Brazil. But German Chancellor Angela Merkel opposed scrapping the agreement, saying it is not an appropriate response. The EU is Mercosur's second largest trading partner. The World Health Organization says the year-long Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo has killed nearly 2,000 people. It says 80 new cases were confirmed just last week. The World Health Organization Executive Director Michael Ryan says the situation remains serious, but he hopes the high number of cases will begin to drop. Ryan says the World Health Organization now has vaccines and effective therapeutics that really change the direction of the Ebola epidemic. This comes after a breakthrough trial for 2 drugs showed a survival rate of 90%.
Outbreak has continued at substantial but stable transmission intensity for the past 10 weeks. Since mid-June, we've observed approximately 80 new confirmed cases per week. Cases over the last 2 to 3 weeks have started to reduce, and we hope this trend will continue.
Beijing blooms with floral works created by contestants at the 2019 World Flower Art Contest. This is the first international flower competition held at the Beijing Horticultural Expo. Details here.
Aesthetically themed floral decorations are displayed at the ongoing Beijing Horticulture Expo. A total of 33 florists from 31 countries and regions brought their artistic concepts to the exhibition. Over 100 floral artworks from the preliminary and final rounds are on show to the public. The beauty on display is not simply meant to be seen. The fragrance gives another layer to the spectacle.
They are top florists hailing from across the world. They express the hope for a better future by infusing ethnic customs and the beauty of nature into their works.
Through their work, florists from all around the world are able to collaborate on ideas of beauty. Each piece is produced according to the traditions of the contestant's country and executed with precision.
It looks like a special shaped chime featuring traditional Chinese culture, but I used Western arranging style to create it, showing a blender of different cultures.
The final stage of competition wrapped up on Tuesday with Australia's Mark Pampling winning the crown.
And a Russian Soyuz spacecraft carrying a humanoid robot has failed to dock with the International Space Station. The robot named Fedor was sent to the ISS on a 2-week mission to support the crew and test its own skills. NASA says the docking process failed because of issues related to the automatic docking system. The Soyuz spacecraft is currently in orbit about 96 meters away from the space station. This is the first ever robot sent to space by Russia. Let's take you to the world of business, where international financial markets have taken a big hit following the latest escalation of the trade war between the US and China. Wall Street indices led by the tech-heavy Nasdaq sunk by up to 3% after Beijing and Washington exchanged tariff hikes. Stock markets in France and Germany also lost more than 1%. Oil prices plunged 2.5% on fears the trade war escalation could push the global economy into recession. Investors looking for a safe haven have piled their money into precious metals, boosting the prices of gold and silver by 2%. Meanwhile, Chinese technology giant Huawei says the impact of U.S. trade restrictions on its business will be less than initially feared. However, the restrictions could lower revenue from the company's smartphone unit by $10 billion just this year. Huawei's $100 billion business has been hit hard since mid-May after Washington put it on a blacklist. The restrictions have barred Huawei from using essential U.S. components and technology. At a news conference in Shenzhen, Huawei Deputy Chairman Eric Xu said the sales crisis has improved. Previously, company sales had fallen by 40%. Well, we'll begin with golf, where America's Brooks Koepka has taken a one-shot lead after the second round of the Tour Championship in Atlanta. North Ireland's Rory McIlroy and Justin Thomas of the U.S. are tied in second place. Koepka birdied the 18th hole while capping a 3-under par 67. The American leads McIlroy by one shot, leaving him at 12 under par. Thomas lost the opening round lead and settled for second spot. Thomas's fellow American Xander Schauffele ended the day in third. The weather in Lahore is giving us mixed signals. It's sunny 1 minute and rainy the next. But let's see what the weather is looking like today around the globe. Well, these are all of our latest stories in detail I have for you this hour. Stay tuned to Indus News for further updates.